There is mold in your house right now, in rooms where nothing is growing. There's mold in the house next door, and the one after that. No indoor space is completely free of mold spores. They come in on shoes and clothes and through open windows, and they have been settling on your walls for as long as the house has been standing. And for all those years, nothing happened. Then something started growing. So the useful question was never what the spores are. They were always there, and they have not changed. The useful question is what changed underneath them, and there is only one candidate. Something inside the wall got wet, and then it stayed wet. I know you want a name for what's growing on your wall. Everybody does, and the people who sell the answer are well aware of it. But the name on a lab report is the single fact about your situation that changes nothing you are going to do next. You don't have a mold problem, you have a water problem. The mold is just how you found out. Start with the official position. The Centers for Disease Control does not recommend mold testing. That's their wording, not my summary of it. And the reasoning isn't what you'd expect. It isn't that mold is nothing to worry about. It's that the health effects of mold are different for different people, so you cannot rely on sampling and culturing to know whether someone might become sick. The test doesn't answer the question you're buying it to answer. Their conclusion is one sentence long. No matter what type of mold is present, you need to remove it. There's a second problem underneath that. Good sampling is expensive, and there are no set standards for what is and what is not an acceptable quantity of different kinds of mold in a home. The Environmental Protection Agency says the same from the other direction. No federal limits have been set for mold or mold spores, so sampling cannot be used to check a building against a standard. There is no standard. You get a number back and there's nothing to compare it to. The species question fares no better. CDC's page on the mold everyone is actually worried about, the greenish-black one people call toxic mold, says plainly that it is not necessary to determine what type of mold you have growing in your home, and that all molds should be treated the same with respect to potential health risks and removal. And on the color, which is the part that scares people, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health puts it about as directly as a federal agency puts anything. There are many mold species, and they form in many different colors, and the color of mold does not necessarily indicate that it is more or less dangerous. So the fact that it's black tells you a great deal less than you've been led to believe. And every road out of the identification question arrives at the same door anyway. Remove it and fix the water. Before we go looking for the water, a word about this channel. I'm Wade. I don't sell mold testing and I don't do remediation work, so I have no stake in which answer you come away with. Houses are simply what I pay attention to, and most of that attention goes to one gap. Almost nothing in a building announces itself where it started. The thing you can see is the symptom, and it sits downstream of the thing you actually have to fix. That's what this channel is for. What's actually wrong, what it actually means, and roughly what it actually costs. Now the useful part. That business at the top about the spores already being in every house and in every house on the street comes from the Occupational Safety Institute rather than from me. Molds are everywhere, which makes exposure to them unavoidable, indoors or outdoors, at home or at work. Here is the mechanism sitting underneath it. Indoors, molds need moisture and a carbon source from building materials to grow, and excess moisture is generally the major cause of indoor mold growth. On that greenish-black species, CDC notes that constant moisture is required for its growth. Not a spill, not one bad week. It has to stay wet, and stay wet for a while. Which gives you the line that same institute states outright. Any mold growing in a building indicates a problem with water or moisture, and it should be immediately addressed. That's what the patch on your wall is. It isn't primarily a health finding, it's a moisture finding. It's the building telling you, in the only language a building has, that something in that assembly has been wet long enough to grow something. This is why the wipe and repaint approach fails so reliably. Clean the surface while the water source is still running, and you've removed the indicator and kept the condition. It comes back, same spot, and now you've lost the marker telling you where to look. The same institute lists painting over water-damaged or moldy surfaces as inappropriate remediation that can cause further problems. That's the polite version. The blunt one is that you've hidden the evidence from yourself. So where is it coming from? CDC's list is short, and it's the right one. Mold grows where there is moisture, such as around leaks in roofs, windows, or pipes, or where there has been a flood. Start there, and start above the mold rather than at it. Water runs downhill inside a wall the same as anywhere else, so the growth is downstream of the leak, sometimes by a full floor. A patch at the bottom of a closet wall can be a window head above it, or a roof detail above that. The stain is where the water stopped, not where it entered. Then think about what sits on the other side. A bathroom wall with growth on the bedroom face usually has a supply line or a drain in it. Growth on a ceiling below a bathroom is that story from underneath. The Occupational Safety Institute makes a point that matters for older houses. Sources of water are often obvious, like a roof leak or a broken pipe, and much less obvious when the wet material and the water source are hidden. Wet insulation in a ceiling is their example. So is moisture at the foundation from ground that slopes toward the house instead of away. If your grade runs the wrong way, you've been irrigating your own foundation, possibly for decades. And then there's the water nobody counts as a leak, which is the air. High relative humidity does this on its own, with no leak anywhere. CDC's guidance is to keep indoor humidity as low as you can, no higher than 50%, all day long, and to make sure bathroom and kitchen exhaust fans vent outside the house rather than into the attic, and that the clothes dryer does too. If you've watched the attic ventilation video on this channel, you know how often that last one is wrong. Here's one figure worth keeping. Water-damaged materials should be dried out completely within 1 to 2 days. Past that window, you're not preventing growth, you're planning for it. Now, the part I'm not going to answer, and I'd rather say that plainly than quietly step around it. Whether the mold in your house is affecting your health is a medical question. I'm not a doctor, and I have no standing to tell you anything about your body. If you or anyone in the house has symptoms you think are connected to this, that goes to your own physician. CDC's position on that same species is that no test exists proving an association between it and particular symptoms, and that individuals with persistent symptoms should see their physician. That's the route, and it isn't through me. The public health agencies do say things about this, and they cut both ways. Exposure to damp and moldy environments may cause a variety of health effects, or none at all. For some people, mold can cause a stuffy nose, sore throat, coughing or wheezing, burning eyes, or a skin rash. People with asthma or a mold allergy may have severe reactions. People with weakened immune systems or chronic lung disease can develop infections in their lungs. Allergic responses are the most common of these. That is neither a scare nor a dismissal. It varies by person, which is exactly why a test on the wall can't tell you about the person. One piece of this I'd want anyone in this audience to hear, because a good number of you are on the list. CDC names 3 groups who should not take part in cleaning mold up at all. People with allergies who are more sensitive to it. People with immune suppression or underlying lung disease who are at higher risk of fungal infection. And people with chronic respiratory disease, asthma or COPD, who may have trouble breathing when exposed. If that's you, this is not a Saturday job. Hire it out and stay out of the house while it's happening. And if you do clean a small patch yourself and reach for bleach, never mix it with ammonia or any other cleaner, because that combination produces a poisonous gas. Now, if someone is standing in your kitchen recommending a test, I won't tell you it's always a swindle. Surface sampling has a legitimate use, and EPA names it. It can tell you whether an area was adequately cleaned after the work is done. That's a real question with a real answer. Before the job, ask 3 things. First, what are you comparing my result to? There is no federal standard, so if that answer is vague, there's nothing on the other side of the comparison. Second, what will you recommend if the number comes back high? And third, what will you recommend if it comes back low? If those last two answers match, and they usually do because both of them are remove it and fix the moisture, the test has told you nothing you didn't know when you looked at the wall. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health goes further than I would. They say a thorough visual inspection, or simply detecting the problem by musty odor, is more reliable than air sampling, and that spore counts from short-term air samples cannot be interpreted in relation to health risks at all. So the money question isn't, what is it? The money question is, where is the water, and how much of the building did it reach before you noticed? That's the figure that varies, and it varies by a lot. Because fixing one leaking window and replacing a rotted subfloor are not the same afternoon. Which brings it back around. You're looking at something black on a wall, and you want to know what it is. I understand the impulse, and I don't think it's foolish. But the answer doesn't change what you do next. Whatever it turns out to be, it comes off, and the water that fed it gets found and stopped. That's the same instruction set for every species on the list. So don't spend your first dollar identifying it. Spend it working out where the water came in. Follow it up and behind rather than staring at the spot. Look at your grade, your gutters, your window heads, your supply lines, your humidity, and where your fans actually vent. Find the water, and the mold has no way back. Skip that step, and you'll be looking at the same wall next year, holding a lab report that told you a name. One thing before you go. If this was useful, hit the like button. It costs you nothing, and it helps the next person find this. Subscribe if you want more of these. There is a long list of things in a house that people get sold the wrong answer to, and I am working through it. And leave a comment, because I'd like to know something. Has anyone ever tried to sell you a mold test? Tell me what they said the result would prove, not what they charged, what they promised. My guess is that the answers all look about the same.